time, the infamous rover Reynardo plundered the floating isles. Then his mother called him to her deathbed. "Swear to me that you won't die on the gallows," she rasped. Reluctantly, he swore. And he whiled away his days at home with music, cards, and wine. But the Emperor had changed. He'd been good once, a shy, almost humble toad. He'd built universities. Then people started whispering about mass graves in the woods, midnight rituals, victims screaming. The Imperial Ravens would round up entire villages, and no one ever returned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. But the librarians had hidden the books, so they'd burnt the librarians. The citizens, outraged, had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join the rebellion. And Reynardo had promised his mother he'd protect him. The kid was looking down, watching his city burn. "Sorry, kid," Reynardo told the kid. "Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone." "My mother died for this book!" "I promised her I'd protect you." Oh, damn it. The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Reynardo had to run after him. The two ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. "Hey," Reynardo said. They cocked their heads at him. "Pick on someone as ugly as you." Wait, that didn't come out right. "For the Emperor!" The ravens cawed and rushed at him. A dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke. Making the skyship docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. "Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels. Or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere. And neither are you." "Try and stop me," laughed the kid. "I bet you don't even have a hero's sword." And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Reynardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? Perfect. A hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Renado's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And then the ravens had come to burn her, and she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was, just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. Wise-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Renato. Oh, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. He'd done it. Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. Starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Well, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. "Stop!" he shouted. "I'm not giving you the book!" shouted the kid, and took off. "No! Peter!" The kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its eye-beam. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it, why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Renato picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. Big deal about this book anyway. Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him. "Where are you running, rebel?" cawed the Raven captain over the loud hailer. Renato could see them cranking up their catapults. "Just going out for milk?" Renato yelled back. "Where can you run?" laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job. "Take us to the rebel base, and we'll spare your life!" it cawed. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven. A sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time. Unless Renato could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Renato had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lupino had sent Renato a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Renato could only rescue him. Renato dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Hero wall, hero sword, ice wall, ice. He just needed to smash something. Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. Because there's no I in team. As for the gate, well, he could take her or leave her. Sorry, it's best I could do. Made all these ore chests anyway? Well, you could have quite a business doing that. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because know your enemy. But it would be great to see her, even if they faced off across sword points, as they'd done so many times at school. The world was a less interesting place without her. Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No? The eyes have had it. Reynardo wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? This burning sword from the south was terrific for barbecuing sausages and ravens. Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, Sudi couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the rebellion plans, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere. In fact, I almost went to get it myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. Sometimes, Renato really hated inanimate objects. Who needed bridges anyway? Renato wondered who was leaving chests of sword-crafting supplies around. He wanted to thank him. Renato knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. Renato was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Renato grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Renato, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Renato heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Renato. Now the fleet would be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council. And then launched the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Reynardo was very proud of himself. He told the Empire everything, but now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Reynardo wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He guessed he'd know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map at the rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days? Reynardo hoped his mother wasn't watching.
Ooh, sparkly, thought Reynardo.
What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Reynardo. See? It was actually very fine weather, except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he'd said, they certainly weren't showing it. Reynardo hated gogglers. It freaked him out to cut them. the long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Now, doopsie-doo. Ready to blossom within him, or something. As he told his hilarious adventures to the Rebel Council, he began to realize they weren't laughing. Just staring at him with those big bug eyes.
Zenobia let you escape?
Asked the speaker.
How do we know you're not a double agent?
Then I wouldn't tell you about her at all.
Maybe you're trying to sound like an idiot, so we don't realize how clever you are.
Croaked the speaker. No, I promise you, I really am that much of an idiot. Renato was about to say when a half-dozen Imperial ships began to bomb the base.
He's betrayed us!
Croaked the toads, and Renato decided it would be good to be somewhere else. He boarded the Farfarer and got out of there. The wind ruffled Renato's fur the wrong way. So the rebels thought he was lying too? Because a half-dozen lousy dropships had probably just tripped over the rebel base? Okay, technically he had betrayed its location, but not willingly. And he'd made up for it, hadn't he? Then something exploded. A cannon shot. The Farfarer plunged out of the clouds. The rebels had hit his ship. As the Farfarer plummeted towards the abyss, he launched himself into the sails of an Imperial ship. The Farfarer was gone. It had been a beautiful ship. And fast. It could do the Kestrel run in 12 furlongs. Or so the salesman had told him. He would show them. He would be the hero of the final battle. They'd know whose side he was on then. That's what it meant to be a hero. To go on fighting, even when both sides were trying to kill you. Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Where did that go to? These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house. Renardo was remembering all his old tricks. And some new ones. Now, he really ought to ask for a raise. Sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. See? Rebels were fighting ravens everywhere. Not a super weapon in sight. No one was summoning giant murder birds out of the clouds. There were no locusts, no rain of fire. Something blew up nearby. And Renardo decided it was not time to stop and ponder. Just as well. He liked acting much better than pondering. This is why heroes are called dashing, Renardo thought. See? Dashing? Finally, Renardo reached the Emperor's ship, and there he saw a strange sight. Zenobia being led in shackles by Lapino with a squad of ravens. What? Lapino was working with the ravens? Was he some sort of traitor? And the Emperor still thought Zenobia was a traitor. Renardo felt oddly bad about that. Should he run down there and rescue her? Oh, but she was the enemy. Then he heard a whistling sound. He looked straight up and saw a rebel ship. It was dropping rather large bombs. One of them kept getting bigger as it fell. Huh? Oh. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true? He'd learned something. Lapino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the Mad Rabbit. But now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? I need more materials, thought Renato. The air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last. Gravity for me. The ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion.
borrowed that.
Felt like Tarzan. Shouldn't get impatient. He needed to take the time to figure out what all his experience had brought him. Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager. Thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest. They had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god, torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. Why was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? Feed the souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it.
This was going to be interesting.
I'm sorry. Was that your shield?
That was always a rush. On Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
Hey! Hey, a workbench!
He could try out his new bling.
This couldn't be good for global warming.
Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Renato pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. This chest contained a Vorpal sword. I'm just kidding. Vorpal swords don't exist. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender?
She seemed as cocksure as he felt.
But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled. She spotted the stone and bolted without another word. Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it." "Please, no," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move. "This thing is evil," she said. She slid the Iblistone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag. "Maybe we can learn from it." She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. "I missed you too." And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblistone? What did that mean? Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace. Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? "You're a sucker for an empowered woman." Renato kicked himself. "Don't make that mistake again." There was an inscription. "Praise the sun." to earth, Renato told the corpses. There was something. Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it? He longed to have it back. He'd felt so good killing ravens with it, and yet he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox, and then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter, never contacting him since. But who was she to tell him the stone was evil? And while he was trying to recover the stone Zenobia had taken from him, the Imperial fleet was tightening its grip. He might fail to save the rebellion, and it would all be her fault. Renato felt a burst of outrage. Not only had she stolen his gem, she'd also stolen his scientists. Sure, they were neutral, but they had helped him discover what the Emperor was up to. They were supposed to be helping me, Renato thought. So unfair. Renato wondered idly if people who had built these... Boy, some people were just liable to explode if you upset them. Renato felt a little bad stealing crafting materials from chests. He preferred to rob them from people at sword point. The scientist's toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections. Mine, said Renato as he took back the stone. Well, we need it for science, croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too. I thought you'd never come for me, whispered the stone. Then, a far-speaker toad croaked in something like Zenobia's voice.
Renato, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. You'll kill everyone you love.
But Renato had an army to lead, an empire to bring down.
I know you can fight this thing.
Zenobia continued in the far-speaker's croak.
You let me live. You know how evil it is. It will destroy you, Renato. It will destroy everything you love.
She was right. He would get rid of it. Right? Now. Or now. He didn't really want to. I know. I'll go to the mountains, Renato thought. I'll find the strength to do it in the peace and quiet there. As the Farfarer landed at the foot of the mountains, Bernardo was surprised to find Lapino there. What are you doing here?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I was stowed away on an Imperial courier ship, dressed up as a combat nurse carrying a general's beak transplant.
This is not a great time, said Renato, who was pretty sure he did not, in fact, believe Lapino's story.
That's when you need your friends,
said Lapino. I just need some peace and quiet, said Renato, and grimly set out on the path. Hoped his hook didn't break.
you!
Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. Renato told his friend how he had slaughtered the toads and how he had nearly slain Zenobia.
A terrible burden, this Iblis stone,
sympathized the rabbit. Yeah, but I need it for the rebellion.
Do you now? You know, you were a pretty fine fighter before you were wielding a demonic decoration.
Oddly, the sword wasn't whispering at him to kill Lapino. Up ahead in the mountains, there was a peaceful spot. If he could rid himself of his burden anywhere, it was there. Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? What's there? See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. They seem to make everyone else harder to kill. I think this is yours, said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. Renato thought it would make a difference, snatching the Ibla stone before the Emperor could get it. It would destroy him. Zenobia and Lupino, they were both trying to save him. Peace. That was what he needed. So much for peace and quiet. There was Lupino. Again. You're stronger than some dumb rock, Lupino said. Let's just bury it, and no one will ever find it again. Renato could feel the spirit energy of all those dead ravens inside him, pecking away. The rabbit was right. Even if the rabbit was a traitor, he was still right. He tore the Ibla stone from his gauntlet and threw it into the hole Lupino had dug. The stone was silent, probably sulking. Now whoop those Imperials, said Lupino. Aren't you coming? Ah, no, I can't come with you. It's my old injury, you know. Recently, it's been acting up terrible. I'd be no use to you at all. So Renato boarded the Farfarer alone. Renato felt lonely on board the Farfarer. How could his old friend Lupino, miraculously escaped from the Empire, leave him to face the final battle alone? Well, he'd abandoned Lupino before, hadn't he? It was only fair. And of course he felt lonely. He'd given up the Ibla stone and all the souls he fed it. Of course he felt alone. But he had done the right thing. It had been hard to do, but there was no better feeling than that. Zenobia would be so proud of him. The battle, alas, was not going well. He no longer had the stone, and he'd never gotten the core. Lupino wasn't with him, and he was up against Zenobia, out there somewhere, maneuvering the Emperor's forces. The rebels had been outnumbered from the start, and he still had that aching longing for the stone. But that is what it means to be a hero. He would fight his way to Zenobia. He would show her what he was capable of. Just him, with no diabolic accoutrements. He would win, no matter the odds. He wasn't that good. Yet. fun.
Type.
Was it? Pirouette, slash, parry, dodge. Renato had never done such good work in a fight. He wished the poets were allowed to sing of his exploits for his old age. Maybe he wouldn't have to kill Zenobia. Maybe he could defeat her and take her prisoner. Then he could turn the tide against the Emperor. If she wasn't crowned princess, once this was all over, she'd have more time for him, right?
This thing really needed a roof.
By some miracle, Renato fought his way to the Emperor's ship. He was exhausted, bleeding, but he'd found the strength to reject the stone. Zenobia came out of the ship. "Renato!" she shouted, and then she fell down and died. Lapino was behind her, wielding a sword that seemed to suck all the light out of the sun. "You idiot! You threw the stone away!" cried Lapino. "You said it was evil." "It hates sanctimonious prigs like you," laughed Lapino. "We're having a grand old time." Renato turned and ran. But no matter where he ran, Lapino jumped in front of him until Renato was cornered. That boy could hop. You wouldn't do this to an old friend, would you? Cried Renato. You mean this? Said Lapino as he slid the sword into Renato's guts. Damn it! Again? Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert, as tempting as it was to explore ancient mysteries. There was a war going on, and also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the mad rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the farm. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Renato had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the Ravens call about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice.
Renato, smash!
Renato looked around the empty village. How had he ever imagined Lapino was anything but a traitor? Any honest rabbit would have fled with the villagers. That
Haven't you always wanted to do that? Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct some crazy scheme, wouldn't he? That used Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around... It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, it was good company. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. What was his name again? There was a cat in this one. And something useful.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
You shall not pass!
Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds. If you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Lady Lapina was right. Maybe he should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. Renato felt ready to take on new powers. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lapino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if this was a ruse so that Lapino could get the core into the hands of the Empire? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lapino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lapino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lapino leapt off the ship. As Lapino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lapino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lapino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector. Right? This could be the new aerobics craze. Am I right? knows. Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right? There was a sign. Take the goat across first. Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the far-speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far-speaker didn't crowd back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the ravens would do to Lapino if Renato didn't rescue him fast. Well, actually he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lapino was a traitor or not. Renato just couldn't bring himself to believe that. What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. You have to admire that. This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes. Where were they holding Lapino anyway? There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts.
No sign of the core either. Was this a wild rabbit chase? Oh, trust Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Lapino was a useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war? What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. At hot potato. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? The new pathway made Renato curious. This stone was incredibly valuable. Renato could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. Renato thought of the choices he had made so far. Rescuing a friend and then sending him to be captured. Recovering a super weapon and letting it fall into enemy hands. Risking an assault on an enemy base for military secrets and then failing to deliver them to the rebellion. At the end of the mountain path, Renato came to a clearing. It was a campfire. Raven feathers and... oh, Lupino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Renato hoped Lupino would not try to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor.
Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer! Renato screamed at the sky. I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward.
Poor Lupino had never been a great warrior. The mad rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Renato furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
Had that door been opened before? Sensed the jewel's power. He had a feeling they were going to be great friends.
He had given up every objective to save his friend. He had given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lupino, he realized. Now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lupino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the valiant. He would avenge him.
Gone rather well, actually. Renato had always wanted a flying carpet. This was more like a flying tabletop. It would do.
Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive! They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Oh, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato, and I'm sick of it." As Renato died, all he could think was, damn it, fooled again. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, and he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the Path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert, as tempting as it was to explore ancient mysteries. There was a war going on, and also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the mad rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly... Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But, wait, where was the prison? The village is empty. Had everybody fled the ravens? That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. At this time, there were so many more ravens.
Oh, good! I didn't run for the nest, said the lead raven. Renato looked around the empty village. How had he ever imagined Lapino was anything but a traitor?
Any honest rabbit would have fled with the villagers. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. This chest was filled with old concert t-shirts. And something useful. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck.
Huh. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was.
She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right,
said Lupino, taking her. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Nice. That could be useful. Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. This chest had teaspoons stolen from every inn in Boreas. Oh, there's something more useful. Why was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. There must be some way to play on that, Nardo thought. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
Where was a workbench when you needed one? Oh, never mind. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while, purred a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy, Renato said. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. What's behind door number 2? Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did.
Don't look down, he thought. Fresh socks, thought Renato. Please be fresh socks. She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... All right, I suppose I wouldn't. She stopped, troubled. Is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them. It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there? Renato reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the observatory. Lapino seemed awfully anxious to meet him at the secret base. If he was a spy for the Empire, he'd turn around and reveal the coordinates to the Empire, jeopardizing the entire rebellion. But Renato couldn't bear to think that Lapino would commit such horrible treachery. There was still good in the Mad Rabbit. He felt sure of it.
I'll meet up with you at the base,
Lapino said through the Toad. Good thinking. Renato gave him the coordinates. There's a shuttle here I can borrow. Renato found Zenobia in the chart room. I've been having awful dreams, she said. Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lot? As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. They're probably... Think of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. Zenobia, Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Zenobia had really turned. The war could soon be over. She could send orders to the fleet that would leave their defenses wide open. The rebels could sail right in and capture the Emperor. Victory, with not too many casualties. Renato had heard stories of a dungeon where chests were filled with potions and weapons. Fairy tales. Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. "It's beautiful," she said. "This was the library of Ubar," he said. "Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book." She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renato thought. To turn her to our cause. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Renato. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Should have died a pirate, he thought. Wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not. I'll just have a dash, thought Renato. The council toads swarmed around Zenobia,
shocked she was there, shocked she had changed sides. Then the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So, she had betrayed him after all. Renato ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Renato knew, she was helping him bring back the old lost gods back from their exile. Renato landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renato felt strangely free. Trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia. Blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur.
Cool. Wish I could do that.
What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? Must be that sufficiently advanced technology we always talked about. Something useful in these things, didn't there? hooked. Renato landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renato felt strangely free. Trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia. Blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. I wonder what happens if I go that way. What had happened to Lupino? Had the mad rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on like the few rebels Renato could see here or there? Ugh, it didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as he'd left in his. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking.
Suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing a Lapino. So the mad rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lapino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renato ran towards the witch. "Lapino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Before he could think, Renato sank his sword into the sorceress. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lapino's the traitor!" Renato had an awful, sinking feeling in his stomach. Then, he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the mad rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then, the sun went out. Damn it. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.